Welcome to my channel Forever Celeb. The Hands He Held, the real story of Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan wears a suit like a man born for it. But behind the Aston Martin, the unshakable charm, and the commanding presence of Agent 007 was something no mission briefing ever prepared him for, a life marked, repeatedly and devastatingly, by the same disease, ovarian cancer, taking first his wife and then his daughter, 22 years apart. Fame gave him everything the world could admire. It gave him nothing to protect the people he loved most. Now at 73, still working, still painting, still choosing every day to move forward, Pierce Brosnan carries a grief that no stage light has ever fully reached. But to understand the man behind the losses, you have to go back to where it started, a childhood defined not by luxury, but by waiting. The boy who kept moving. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland. By the time he was 4 years old, his mother May had moved to London to train and work as a nurse, able to return home only once or twice a year when work allowed. His father Thomas had already left. Pierce moved between homes, his maternal grandparents first, then relatives, then the boarding house of a woman named Eileen Riley. At Eileen's house, he slept on a small iron bed beside a window shielded by green curtains and newspapers pinned up to block the light. He remembered it, years later, not with bitterness but with warmth. Eileen's children became his companions. The neighborhood streets introduced him to friends. A small projector his mother once sent home cast images of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck onto the ceiling, turning the modest room into his own private cinema. One Christmas, May couldn't come home. She sent a pair of old boxing gloves instead. Pierce kept them on his bookshelf for decades and never felt the need to explain why. Those gloves had bridged every mile between them. He later said of his grandfather, "He was the hand I held on to." In August 1964, at 11 years old, he was finally reunited with his mother and her new husband, William Carmichael, in England. Among his first weeks there, the family took him to see Goldfinger. Sean Connery's Bond appeared on screen, calm, sophisticated, danger hidden perfectly beneath charm. Outside the theater, London was considerably less welcoming. His classmates called him the Irish boy. He chose to embrace it before anyone else could use it against him. The stage found him. At 16, he left school with a portfolio of drawings and enrolled in commercial illustration. Acting entered his life almost by accident through an experimental drama class that introduced him to movement, mime, and the stage. He found, in that room, something he hadn't experienced before. What mattered was presence, not where you came from. He later spent 3 years at the Drama Centre London, developing discipline across every gesture and every line. "When acting came to me, it was a liberation," he said. The boy who had moved from one home to another had finally found a profession that required him to stand still, speak clearly, and be seen. After graduating in 1975, he joined the York Theatre Royal and worked steadily through the demanding rhythms of live performance. In 1977, Tennessee Williams himself cast him in the British production of The Red Devil Battery Sign. After watching him perform, Williams sent a telegram, "Thank God for you, my dear boy." It was encouragement, not instant fame, but it moved the right people to look more closely. His first film appearances came in 1980, The Mirror Cracked alongside Elizabeth Taylor and Angela Lansbury, and The Long Good Friday with Bob Hoskins and Helen Mirren. Brief roles, both of them. But the right productions. Remington Steele and the role that almost was. Television was where America found him. In 1982, he took on the role of the mysterious con artist Remington Steele on NBC, a romantic detective series that ran for 5 seasons and gave him the sustained fame that years of brief appearances never had. His tailored suits, confident gaze, and composed charm reminded audiences of someone. James Bond. They had imagined Pierce Brosnan as 007 long before the role came anywhere near him. In 1986, when Remington Steele was cancelled, he was invited to succeed Roger Moore as Bond. Then, within 60 days, on the very last day of the option period, as he was carrying champagne to the beach to meet his wife Cassandra, the phone rang. NBC had revived the series. Bond producer Albert "Cubby" Broccoli refused to allow the new 007 to remain attached to a television show. Timothy Dalton was cast instead. Brosnan's response, recalled years later, "It was a shock. Then he went back to work. He kept building." The Fourth Protocol, 1987, opposite Michael Caine, Cold and Dangerous. Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, alongside Robin Williams and Sally Field, proving he could be genuinely funny. His career continued to evolve without the role that everyone assumed was his destiny. Cassandra. Pierce Brosnan met Cassandra Harris in London in the mid-1970s. She came with 2 children, Charlotte and Christopher, from her marriage to actor Dermot Harris. When Dermot died, Pierce adopted both children. They married in 1980. Their son Sean was born in September 1983. Cassandra had appeared in the Bond film For Your Eyes Only in 1981, long before Bond became a real possibility for Pierce. She understood an actor's uncertainty from the inside. She was also the first stable home he had ever truly known. After the grandfather, after the boarding houses, after all the moving, she gave him a place to belong. Their home was full of 3 children's noise, friends, conversations about work, plans for the future. In 1987, while the family was in India during the filming of The Deceivers, Cassandra began feeling unusually exhausted. Her abdomen swelled. Back in London, surgery confirmed what no one had expected: ovarian cancer. 8 surgeries followed. Approximately 18 months of chemotherapy. Cassandra made her own medical decisions, educated herself about her options, and tried to maintain the rhythm of family life whenever her health permitted. Pierce described himself as the quiet presence beside her, accompanying her through every treatment, every uncertain result, every hallway where doctors delivered news. Their son Sean, still very young, would pretend to be a doctor when chemotherapy left his mother exhausted, taking care of her in the only way a small child could. The family found ways to hold on to warmth even as illness surrounded them. At their home in Malibu, friends remember the children laughing at the swimming pool while Cassandra stood nearby watching. Just 2 days after one of her chemotherapy sessions, she walked the property with Pierce before they decided to buy it. As her condition worsened, the available treatments ran out. About a week before her final hospitalization, it was Cassandra, not Pierce, who offered comfort, even then. In the hospital, they held each other's hands and prayed. A priest had left Bible passages, and Pierce tried to read them aloud beside her bed. The man who had memorized thousands of lines on stage and screen could not remember the words. He apologized. Unable to hear her reply clearly, he leaned closer. She smiled and softly said, "Always the actor." Those were the last words he clearly heard from his wife. On December 28, 1991, Cassandra passed away at 43, one day after their 11th wedding anniversary. Pierce returned home that afternoon, lifted Sean onto his lap, and gently told him his mother was gone. The little boy's eyes filled with tears that never fell. He whispered that his mother would no longer be in pain. Cassandra never lived to see Pierce Brosnan become James Bond. The resilience audiences would later admire in him had been built not in a studio but in hospital corridors and in the quiet moments when their hands found each other. Bond, at last. In 1994, 8 years after that phone call on the beach, Timothy Dalton stepped away from the franchise, and Pierce was invited back. On June 8, 1994, he was officially announced as the 5th James Bond. 2 days later, filming Robinson Crusoe in a remote part of Papua New Guinea, local children recognized him from the international announcement and shouted in unison, "James Bond! James Bond!" The news had traveled to the edge of the world before he had filmed a single frame. GoldenEye premiered in 1995, after the Bond franchise had been absent from theaters for 6 years. The Cold War had ended, audiences had changed, and the character's future was genuinely uncertain. Brosnan entered carrying the sophistication of Remington steel and layered it with a tougher, grittier edge suited to a new era. The film earned over $350 million worldwide, the highest-grossing Bond film at that point. Judi Dench's M challenged every assumption about what the character meant. The franchise was alive again. Pierce held the role for 4 films across a decade. His final Bond film was Die Another Day in 2002. In 2004, while filming After the Sunset in the Bahamas, his agent called to tell him the negotiations were over. Producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson spoke with him briefly, confirming the franchise was moving in a new direction. He thanked them and said goodbye. Years later, he admitted the unexpected ending left him feeling there was unfinished business. The disappointment was real. He never allowed it to diminish what the role had given him: 4 films, a decade of worldwide recognition, and the foundation for his production company, Irish Dreamtime, which let him shape projects entirely on his own terms. His answer to the post-Bond chapter was The Matador, 2005, in which he played Julian Noble. A weary, unstable hitman whose loneliness and dark humor stripped away every trace of Bond's composed invulnerability. He also served as producer. The performance earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Mamma Mia! Followed, then The November Man, then years of work that pushed deliberately away from the spy who had made him famous, not out of resentment, but because the artist in him needed more room than the tuxedo allowed. Charlotte Brosnan was Cassandra's daughter, born in 1971. Pierce had entered her life when she was a little girl and adopted her after her father Dermot Harris died. She married Alex Smith and together they raised 2 children, Isabella and Lucas. Pierce later said his fondest memory of her was simple: he could always make her laugh. Ovarian cancer found Charlotte nearly 20 years after it had taken her mother. She had watched the disease claim Cassandra in 1991. In the early 2010s, she received the same diagnosis. Throughout 3 years of treatment, she continued living as fully as she could, as a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister. Only weeks before her death, Charlotte married Alex in a ceremony about nothing but love and the people gathered around her. Treatment schedules and hospital visits fell away for those hours. She stood beside the man who had shared her life for years, surrounded by the people she loved most. Charlotte died on June 28, 2013, in London, at 41. Alex was beside her, along with 14-year-old Isabella, 8-year-old Lucas, and her brothers Christopher and Sean. Pierce's public statement was brief. He called her his beloved daughter, asked for prayers for her 2 children, and prayed that a cure would soon be found for the disease that had claimed both her and her mother. The following year at Stand Up to Cancer, Pierce spoke publicly about both losses, Cassandra's hand held years before, and then Charlotte's. As a father, he had watched the same disease take 2 generations of his own family. He fell silent. No metaphor was needed. Keely, and the life that continued. Pierce met Keely Shea Smith in Cabo San Lucas in 1994, 3 years after Cassandra's death, months before GoldenEye would make him Bond to an entirely new global audience. She was working as a journalist. They met at a party in Mexico. Keely never had to compete with Cassandra's memory. What they built together belonged to the next chapter entirely. She brought to their relationship not only her career as a journalist, filmmaker, an environmental activist, but also a shared commitment to causes that went beyond either of their public profiles. Together they worked to oppose industrial development threatening gray whale habitats in Mexico and an LNG terminal off the California coast. Their son Dylan was born in 1997. Paris followed in 2001. On August 4, 2001, they married at Ballintubber Abbey in County Mayo, Ireland, surrounded by both families, by Cassandra's enduring memory, by Pierce's older children, and by the two young sons they were raising together. Keely summed up the foundation of their marriage in 2 words: best friends. Their bond was built through daily choices over more than 2 decades. Raising children, caring for their home, supporting each other's work, and pursuing shared goals when no cameras were present. When Charlotte died in 2013, Keely couldn't remove Pierce's grief. She remained beside him as life partner and mother, as the family faced again what had already been faced once before. Love didn't erase the loss. Neither did loss prevent them from continuing to choose each other. Dylan and Paris grew up between Malibu and Hawaii, close to the oceans their parents worked to protect. Christopher Brosnan was born in 1972 to Cassandra and Dermot Harris. Pierce adopted him along with Charlotte. As an adult, Christopher studied screenwriting at UCLA and directing at the New York Film Academy, and worked behind the camera on several of Pierce's productions including Tomorrow Never Dies and The Thomas Crown Affair. When Cassandra died in 1991, Christopher was 19. Pierce later said he could see the pain in his son's eyes and the emptiness his mother's death had created. In the years that followed, Christopher struggled with addiction. Pierce and the family did everything they could to support him, while understanding that recovery ultimately belongs to the person who needs it, not to those who love them. By 2005, Pierce described his son as a deeply lost man and acknowledged that all he could do was hold on to hope. In his Father's Day message in 2022, Pierce named Christopher alongside Paris, Dylan, and Sean, "My love for you is forever, my dear sons." In November 2025, Pierce, Christopher, and Dylan were seen leaving a family dinner together in Notting Hill. One dinner doesn't mean every wound has healed. Neither Pierce nor Christopher has spoken publicly about the state of their relationship in detail. But the image carries its own quiet meaning: father and son, at the same table again. Still here. At 73, Pierce Brosnan continues working, appearing in Gant and the latest season of Mobland, and painting remains as indispensable to his life as any role he has ever played. He has served as a UNICEF Ireland ambassador since 2001. He has consistently used the platform that Bond gave him to speak for children who have no platform of their own, and for coastlines and wildlife that cannot speak for themselves. The losses are permanent. Cassandra is still remembered. Charlotte is still remembered. The disease that took both of them has not been cured, and Pierce's appearances at cancer research fundraisers carry the weight of someone who holds that fact personally.